Welcome back, everyone, to day 2 of House of Paint's 2020 Knowledge Conference. Oh, look at that already. It's a global pandemic. We're all working from home, and cats are just part of the fun. We are here with Samuel Kanza and Tafari Hall from Produced by Youth. Produced by Youth is an amazing local organization. It is a non-profit music production organization that provides a safe space for marginalized Black youth in Ottawa to create, be empowered, and learn skills to eventually be leaders in their communities. We are very lucky to have Samuel and Tafari with us today to run a workshop on getting your drums to knock on FL Studio. Tafari Hall also goes by the name Young Heat. Young Heat is a Jamaican-Canadian artist with over 10 years of music experience. And lately he's had a lot of success garnering millions of listeners on YouTube, SoundCloud, and Spotify. Before we get started, I do want to acknowledge all of House of Paint's funders, without the support of whom we wouldn't be able to make this happen. It's a long list. So we are grateful for the financial support and the community partnership from the City of Ottawa, Ontario Arts Council, the Government of Canada, Canadian Heritage, ACFO Ottawa, CBC Ottawa, Ottawa Bilang, Dominion City, Alternative Hosting, Ill Abilities, Mural Roots, Ottawa Music Industry Coalition, and our presenters right now, Produced by Youth. I'm so sorry about the cat, guys.
Oh no, all good. Thank you.
Yeah, he likes the spotlight. All right, I'm gonna pass this to Produced by Youth, and me and Murray are gonna get out of here. Welcome.
Hi, well, thank you for introducing us. That was a really, really good introduction. Shout out to House of Paint for having us, honestly. I remember growing up in the city of Ottawa, going to the events under the bridge and seeing like the breakdancing battles. Have you been to those before?
I have never been to one.
They're really cool.
This year I was planning on it, but then COVID happened.
They're really cool. Like I've been to like quite a few of them because I used to be more in the b-boy dancing scene, and I never thought I'd one day ever be showcasing anything on it, to be honest. So it's definitely an honor to be showcasing on House of Paint, and we're definitely not taking it for granted as Produced by Youth. So as Veronica said, we are going to be giving you guys a lesson, or showcasing a lesson really, about getting your drums to knock on FL Studio. So this is really good for all the creators out there, all the producers, the beat makers. You're gonna get kind of an idea of how to get your kicks to sound more crispy and sharper through the method that Young Heat is gonna teach. This is also a lesson that we teach in our organization called Produced by Youth. It's one of the lessons. And before we get right into that lesson, we're gonna do a quick introduction about who we are. I'm gonna give you guys kind of a breakdown about where we're coming from, what we do really, and go from there. So we're gonna switch into some slides. So I'm just gonna share my screen really quickly. Which is like this. Awesome. So I guess you guys can see that. So it's just a kind of an overview of what that's gonna look like for the next 20 to half an hour. So we're gonna cover basically our journey, like how we came about as Produced by Youth, our target issues, our proposed solution, who we are as a team, our organizational mentor, again, like more specifically the team itself, and then our project plan plus our impact as well. So let's get into it. All right, so our target issues. So these are the things that are really, really close to our heart and why we're doing Produced by Youth. So just to give you guys kind of an overview before we get into it, is that our organization, what we focus on is the Black community, the Black youth more specifically, and creating a safe space for them to make music. And one thing that's been on our heart coming down to the city of Ottawa is the fact that a lot of these Black youth, they lack a space to just create music and to produce. Of course, through different artists in the city, it's been getting better, but we knew that we really wanted to push that in the city, and that's why we created some things such as Produce That Youth. So different target issues, as you can see on the screen, we got the lack of safe spaces, inaccessible music production resources to low-income youth. So that's the fact that a lot of these youth out there may not have the money to go to the studio and record really, really professional tracks. So what we do is we really just give them, like I was saying, just a space for them to come and create that track they've always wanted to create, but may not have the funds to do it. Also, cultural disconnect between themselves and the city of Ottawa. As you guys know, in the city is very governmental. So the end goal for many of the people here is to work in the government, right? It's not so much of a, hey, I want to grow up to become the next big artist, the next chance of rapper. So in Ottawa, unfortunately, there's a big cultural disconnect between the youth who want to create music and the culture in the city itself. So that's something that we like to cater to. It kind of gives, through that safe space, an opportunity for them to feel connected to the city and through music. So, of course, anti-Black racism and discrimination, that's another very big target issue. I feel like social media, when it comes to that, speaks for itself with everything that's been happening over the past few months. As you guys know, 2020 has been a very, very hard year for a lot of colored folks. It's been really crazy. So what we're doing, even though we kind of did it before this whole, I guess, Black Lives Matter movement, it's still something that's on our heart, whether it's within that movement or out of it. One of our big burden is the fact that there's a lot of racism in the city. Unfortunately, it's often covered in different ways, but we want to cater to the youth and kind of give them, again, that space to create music and to feel safe while they do it. And the last biggest target issue, I think for me personally, that's my biggest one, is the discouragement of pursuing music and the arts. So when it comes down to music, as you guys know, it's one of those industries, or it's one of those fields where it can be very discouraging to pursue, whether that's through lack of funding or lack of even inspiration or motivation, especially considering that, like I was saying earlier, we're a city in Ottawa where we haven't really seen a quote unquote like a Drake of the city. Like that's never been a thing in Ottawa to that extent. So it's very easy for a lot of these youth to feel discouraged to pursue music and to see themselves as the next big thing. So one thing that we want to give to these youth is not only cultural knowledge or expertise when it comes to the technical side of music, but also just empowering them to believe that they can actually do it. It's not going to be easy. If you're one of the students in the program, you know that we don't like to sugarcoat anything. Like we tell you flat out, it's not an easy journey, but if you really want it, it is possible. You can be one of those people that quote unquote makes it out of the city. So that is another one of our target issues. All right, so our proposed solution. So I kind of jumped ahead of myself, but that's what we do. So our project, what we do is basically that we serve marginalized Black youth between the ages of 15 to 25. And what we do, like I was saying, is we want to create a safe space for them to have an outlet and create music. So it is, in a sense, some kind of informal mentorship. Why? Because each single year we have more and more youth, but we not only teach them how to create beats or teach them the fundamentals of business when it comes to music, but we also mentor them in a way. So we check upon these youth, we make sure they're good, we make sure they're straight. Something that we're really big on, even when it comes to transportation, is we actually offer presto cards for the youth to go to get to class and to go back home. So like we're really big on making sure these youth are taken care of. We give them food during the lessons and so forth. So it is some sort of informal mentorship. And something also that we're big on is making sure that the newcomers, first and second generation Black youth, are also being catered to. It's easy for, especially first generation Black youth, to not see, I guess, be encouraged to pursue music again. Because when you're first generation, you're used to your parents coming from another country, often not in quote unquote and wealth. They came because they wanted to escape something else. So for a lot of these Black youths, it's one of those things where they've seen quote unquote their parents struggle, so they don't really have that drive to pursue music as they should. So that's definitely a group of people that we like to cater when it comes down to our organization. Another thing that we provide is access to free studio time, equipment, and expertise. So free studio time being the fact that we have equipment with our organization. So we have microphones, we have headphones, we have really good stuff for them to create and make beats, and also for them to, for those who are more into songwriting or more into singing and so forth, we have this equipment as well. So it is free studio time really when they come to our lesson, because they get to create with equipment that you would find in a, I guess, a more formal studio. And like I was saying, we also have the equipment to back that up, and we also have the expertise. As Veronica said, I don't want to flex, but I'm sitting beside a man who has millions of streams on different platforms. So some of us have, he's looking at me, he's laughing, he's laughing because it's funny. I always say about the fry, out of anything, I'm like, you know what? I don't know anyone that has millions of streams. So I can at least say I died knowing one person that had at least millions of streams on different platforms. So there is expertise. Each and every single one of us, myself, Tafar, also known as Young Heat, and also Lala Mabibi, who can't be here today, but also known as For the World. Everybody has kind of experience in the field of music, in this field of music theory or branding and marketing. So there's expertise coming from us. All right, so more of a thorough breakdown of what we do, our organization. So it's a weekly music production and songwriting workshop. It covers different topics such as music theory, vocal instrument recording, sound design, composing / arranging, sampling, as well as business, branding, and marketing. For those who listened to the interview this morning that I had with CBC's host, Robin, also known as Robin the Stallion, something that we're really big on is to not only empower people to know how to make music, but also to be developed as artists from the business side of things. So one thing that we take pride on, or pride in, I should say, is that we like to develop these youth as artists in different ways. Not just you're a good beat maker, but more you're a good beat maker and you're also a businessman in a sense. Like you're a good producer, but you also have proper branding, or you're a good singer and you also know how to read a contract, little things like that. So that's what we provide through the program, and we take a lot of pride in that as well. So as you guys can see on the screen, we offer 9 different workshops, and those 9 workshops, as I said earlier, they cover all these different topics. And the 10th lesson, or the 10th workshop, I should say, is a graduation. So at the end of our program, the students actually get to quote unquote perform, or now it's COVID, so it is like showcase a song that they've created through our program. And for me personally, that's probably the best part of the whole thing, because you get to witness students who came in the program not knowing anything about FL Studio or knowing how to create music or anything like that. And you see them leaving like being super good at making beats and so forth. Like I was saying earlier, the interview I had earlier with CBC, one of the students was on it as well. Her name is Whitney. She's really, really good. She came in the program super shy, not really knowing how to make music through FL or anything like that. And if you guys heard her graduation song, it was like just banging. Like it was the whole room was like, whoa, this is good. And the way she speaks too, like you wouldn't expect that, but she came strong with like some 808s and like different melodies and so forth. And I heard her song that she actually played on the radio earlier this morning, and she is like killing it now. Like I was listening to it, I was like, yo, I can't believe this is Whitney, because I looked back at when she first came in the program and she didn't know how to use FL like that. You know, she was kind of just testing the waters, and now I'm seeing her actually pursuing music, and that's even inspiring to us as the teachers. So that's a really big thing that we're on. A big part of our program is the 10th lesson / workshop, which is the graduation. For the past 2 cycles, it's been, for the last cycle, it was online because of COVID, and this cycle is going to be online as well. But the first cycle we had, it was face-to-face, and we had an overwhelming response. We had over 100 people showing up and just supporting the team, so that was really, really good. So the graduation is the 10th workshop that we offer, and that is where the students get to showcase their work. So as it says at the bottom, it's 2 cycles per year, and it's a 3-year project horizon. So our organizational mentor that's who we are under. So we operate out of Saw Gallery, And how it works is that basically Saw Gallery, they provide like different administrative support. When it comes to project mentoring as well, they really help us out. And also when it comes out to the financial accountability to PBY, they are the people for that. And it's really cool because it's not only a formal partnership, but they really offer also like say altogether even also like a mentoring. Like there's certain instances where we may not know like how to do things. Like I was saying, it's a grassroots project, grassroots organization. So there are a lot of things that we're learning as we go, and they've been with us, just supporting us and showing us love and teaching us certain things that we never knew about when it comes out to starting an organization. So they've been really, really good to us, and they are our organizational mentors. Now the team, also known as the coolest. So we're gonna go through that in detail. So obviously the first one, the Farah Hall, which is the man of the hour. He's the one that is going to be presenting the lesson on how to make your kicks knock on FL Studio. We also have Leland Mabibi, and you also have myself, Samuel Kenza. So let's just run through that. So Leland, he wasn't able to be here today, but he is the program coordinator and lead facilitator. Some of you guys may know him as For the World. He really, really, really is engaged with the hip hop culture in the city of Ottawa. He is part of Cap City Cypher. I don't want to put a flex on that, but he just released a really good album called The Chase. Really good rapper, really good artist. Like I was saying, he is the lead facilitator. So when it comes down to the connection between us and the organizational mentor, he's the one that usually speaks to them. And he is also one of the teachers on the organization throughout the 9 workshops. He teaches, I believe, the sampling class. He teaches also music theory class. He teaches songwriting as well. Yeah, he's a phenomenal songwriter. So he teaches songwriting as well. So he teaches different classes, and he is, I would say for sure, like he's been spearheading this whole organization, and he really is kind of the pillar of this whole thing. And he brought us on. He gave us a vision, and he told us like what he had in mind. We tweaked it a little bit. We gave our input, and like that's how PBY really was created. So, I don't know if he's watching this, but he's definitely, I would say, and I'm humbling saying this, that he's the heart of PBY. So, shout out to you, Leland Mabibi. Keep striving and keep loving. Next up, Farah Hall, aka Pretty Boy Taffy. Do you want to introduce yourself, or?
I mean, I think Veronica gave a very good introduction. But yeah, there's some stuff on the screen too with additional information. But yeah, I've been making music for a while. I've also run a recording studio before. I've been doing a lot of engineering in the past 5 years. And yeah, more recently just produced by youth. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Farah Hall, I mean, that was a really good description. He's that guy. He's just that guy. When it comes down to the expertise, when it comes to music, he has the most experience. He's seen it in ways that me and Lon never seen music in the industry itself. So he brings something really refreshing to the table, and he has a heart for just seeing people grow, and I really respect that. I never told you that, but I rate that. I really do. Having like a bromance moment live. And then, of course, Samuel Kenza. I really need to change that picture. That's when I have a clean shave. So I'm the marketing and outreach coordinator. So when it comes down to, I often say that when it comes down to social media, the different platforms, I'm in charge of that. When it comes down to even communication between, like, for example, like I was saying earlier about like the CBS thing, I mean the CVC thing and House of Paint. So I'd be focusing on these things and kind of being the person who reaches out to the students, getting students involved and so forth. So that is what I do. I mean, you can look on the screen, it gives you a quick little description of who I am. If you have any questions, I always say to people, feel free to send us an email and we'll be happy to answer your questions. All right, so for the next 3 years, as I was saying earlier, that is our plan. So how it works, so it's not complicated. So the first year, we have 2 cycles per year, okay? So the first year, we just had our first cycle, cycle 1 and cycle 2. Now we're in our second year, which is cycle 3. And each single year, we increase the number of students that we have in our program. So the first year, we had 10 youth, amazing 10 youth. So cycle 1 and cycle 2, we're running with 10 youth. And now we are in year 2, aka cycle 3, and we're teaching 15 youth, which has been really, really good so far. And then our third year, which is going to be cycle 6, we're going to have 20 youth, which means 90 youth altogether. That is what we're expecting to impact. We're expecting to impact 90 youth who will also eventually in the future go ahead and develop other people as well. Because like I was saying, our goal is not so much to only develop people as artists, but also to develop people as individuals and develop their characters as well. So our goal is to impact 90 different youth over the next 3 years. So intended impact. So one thing that we want to improve in the city, as I was saying in my first slide, is the cultural identity through self-expression, and that is through giving people a safe space or giving these youth a safe space. We also want to increase the sense of community and connection with other Black youth creatives through collaboration extending beyond the project. So one thing about a project, as I was saying, throughout the 9 weeks or the 9 workshops, the students create a song, and then on the 10th workshop, they perform/showcase the song. And one thing that we're big on is that they don't have to do that alone. They can actually collaborate with other students. Why? Because we know that when it comes out to this industry, there is so much power in collaboration. And we don't want these people to have this perspective that in the music industry, they have to just go far, go alone. But you can actually collaborate with other people, and there's so much beauty in that as well. So that is something that they have the freedom to do. They get to collaborate with other people. Another big intended impact is having them to have a better sense of self as a result of being able to self-express, yes, surrounded by, so them being surrounded by supportive people from the same racial and artistic community, example, other youth who are interested in music. Another big impact is to improve their self-confidence and skills, as well as interpersonal and communication skills through their participation in the workshop. So as I was speaking about, like when it comes down to Whitney was one of the students in our cycle 1. Something I saw in her, a really big thing in her, was there was such an improvement in self-confidence. And as I was saying, this is something that we really, really, really push. We don't want them to just come and become really great artists, but we want them to become really great people as well. Another big impact is increased engagement with local immigrant community, both immigrant/Black community as well as educational community of peers. Well, that kind of speaks for itself. And then finally, increased engagement and relationship with other Black youth and adults in the youth's lives. So having that relationship with other people, even in the city, other youth that know more, or other adults, I should say, that know more about the musical industry in the city of Ottawa and so forth. We want to kind of create that culture where there's a relationship between the youth and the older folks who've been through this whole musical journey. So before we move on to the lesson, oh, sorry, this is actually, okay, this is so awkward. I said available in July. That is not true. But let me just go to like this one so you guys are not confused. So before we move into the actual lesson on how to make your beat knocks, for anyone who is listening to this, or if you're interested in joining our next cycle, which, as I said, we are currently in cycle number 3. The next one will be next year. If you're interested, I will ask you to please follow us on social media, and you'll see an update on there when it comes out to even the registration, when it opens and so forth. Our social media platforms, you got Instagram, Twitter, and also Facebook. All the handles are the same. It's Produced Youth. Yes, we do. Perfect. So it is Produced Youth. That's how you can engage with us. If you have any questions, feel free to also reach out to us through there as well. And for some, sometimes we follow back. Sometimes. Sometimes we follow back. Yeah, okay. All right. We all follow back, I get. So that is who we are, as Produced by Youth. Also, if you'd like to know how to support us in a different way, you can also like just go ahead and give some kind of funds as well. We have a donation page, which is really, really exciting. We've been working on it for some time because we've had a lot of people ask us, how can we actually donate to you guys? How can we support you guys from a financial standpoint? So if you would like to even help us from a financial standpoint, and all funds going back into the program, meaning building more computers, meaning also getting more equipment and so forth, you can go ahead and check out any of these platforms. We have a link in the bio. If you click the link in the bio, you'll actually see like a donate button, and from there it'll take you to a different page. It'll show who we are as Produced by Youth, and you can put in your amount through there. It's really simple and easy. So thank you guys for this quick, or for listening to this quick introduction of who we are as Produced by Youth. For those who were with us at the graduation, I'm sure you guys are like, we already heard this. We just want to learn how to make these kicks knock. So without further ado, we're going to transition into our brother here, Young Heat. He's going to give us a very, very thorough and good lesson on how to get your kicks to knock on FL Studio. So a little segue here, because you do have to move the computer. So this might be like awkward two seconds. So let me just stop sharing my screen for a sec. Right there. Perfect. So what I can do, maybe I can do this. So I'm just gonna stop the video for like 30 seconds, and we're gonna be right back.
Be right back. You can still hear me. I know you can. Okay, what's up? And we can even see Samuel in the back. It's perfect.
Oh, I like that.
All right. So, I'll be teaching you how I process my drums. And a little bonus too, I'm going to show you kind of how that plays into your entire track in general when you're doing mixing. So, I'm just going to share my screen here. Cool. So I have a little beat here. It's just something I made quickly, kind of as a good example. Most of the drums that I use in this are actually from a sample pack I put together. And I don't know how, maybe I can share the link at some point. But it should be in my Instagram. So if you go to Young Heat Beats at Instagram.com, there's a link inside my actual bio, and you can click on it, and at the very bottom it should say Young Heat's Archive, and you can get a lot of the drums from there. Because before I go into it, I'd like to say that drums are extremely important. You can process your drums kind of all you want, but it really starts at the sounds that you're using. Because anytime that you're doing anything with your sound, like manipulating, like let's say EQ, compression, whatever you're doing to it, it's kind of creating mud that you can't really see or really hear until kind of like the end product. Like when you're adding, for example, like frequency to your kicks, you're actually adding something that's not really there. You're just boosting something that already exists. So it's kind of like fake in a sense. The only way to get around that is to have like really good analog equipment, which is like very expensive, hard to come by now, especially too, because everything's moving to digital now. So my biggest tip for drums is search for sample packs, like use Splice, go on Reddit drum kits, like wherever, and get good sounds. Even recording them yourself too. There's plenty of producers. Like not long ago we had Romderful. He's a really dope producer from Selection, and he explained how probably like 80% of his percussion is all recorded from him just going around with his phone and banging on things and recording it. Because percussion and stuff like that, essentially what it is just recorded with a good microphone. But the mics in your phone now are so good that you could even record voice notes and use that in tracks. There's plenty of people that do that. Even for example, like Steve Lacy creates all of his music on an iPhone through an iRig. So really just use what you have around you, and definitely pick your sounds well before you go into it, and try not to spend too much time tweaking one sound to make it sound good. You'll notice when I process these drums, I'm doing a couple of things to them. I'm not doing a whole lot, because at the end of the day, you want to choose good sounds right off the bat, and you want to choose sounds that actually work together. So I'm gonna just play this for you real quick so you can listen to it. I'll let it loop a couple times. And I'll kind of start with the drums and I'll add the chords and the 808 and then the melody as well. So. Oh, I'll have to reset, just give me 2 seconds. Share screen. Cool, should be good now. Nothing too complex, just like really smooth roads with some nice drums in it. A little bit more R&B with the tempo, and an 808 in there. So as you can see, a lot of the sounds that I used are from my drum kit, except the percussion. I have another kit for that, but as you can hear, like the sounds already sound really good together. And again, that's all about the sound selection. I made sure that they all sounded good together, and right off the bat, they already kind of had some good body to them. And then for the melodies that I used the Rhodes on Omnisphere, and then I created an actual plug through Serum, and that's something completely different. That's like building sound. We're going to be focusing on the drums today. So if I open up my mixer here, I've labeled everything so you can kind of see it very well. So right now, if I play the audio, you'll kind of see where my levels are sitting at. I have my kick quite high, my clap a little bit under, my hats, my open hat, my rim shot kind of sitting around the same level. Primarily when you're mixing drums, you want your kick to be the loudest thing in your mix. You want that to kind of cut through everything else, especially because traditionally your mix is sitting pretty mono in your mix. So it's already kind of fighting for space. And another thing too is when you have an 808 going as well, your kick sits in the lower frequency, so that can actually clash. So one thing I'll show you, I'll just solo the 808 and the kick here. It's already standing out quite well, but one thing we can do, like let's say we had our 808 kind of louder, or we just wanted our kick just to sit better in general. One thing we can do is actually called sidechaining. So it has nothing to do with EQing or messing with frequencies. It just has to do with basically controlling the volume of your 808 when your kick is present. So every time your kick is hitting, it's dropping the volume. That way it's standing out a little bit more. So what you can do, this is on FL Studio 11, but if you're using FL Studio 20, it's the same rules. You just want to select your mixer channel, and then you right-click your send. And for FL20, I think you just click and it'll automatically do it. And then you're just sidechaining to this track. So basically that's saying, hey, kick, I want you to lower this 808 or do something to this 808, because sidechaining necessarily doesn't just mean volume. It can mean many things. So in this case, I'm using Fruity Limiter, which comes with FL Studio, and it's very useful. Basically, what you want to do is you want to go over to your compression section, drop your thresholds, and you got to kind of use your ear to see kind of how much you want to sidechain. And then I'm going to lower my ratio to, like, let's say there. So if we play it now and we glide our sidechain to 1, that's essentially just saying the first thing I've loaded in, I want that to be sidechained with it. This is actually controlling like gain and volume, and it's kind of doing a little bit of compressing at the same time. I prefer using this way. Again, I just find it sounds better, and you actually have a lot more control over what it's actually doing. Because as you'll see, you have things like attack and release that you can edit. So I'm just gonna play it through and I'll kind of just start moving knobs around so you can kind of get a feel for what I'm doing. So as you can see where I have it at now, it's heavily ducking the 808, and that actually translates visually for you on Fruity Limiter. And basically that purple, or where like that little line's coming down, that's the volume being pushed down on your 808 from your kick. So we don't want it to be too over exaggerated, especially because our kick is already stands out quite a bit in the mix. So we're just gonna lower it a little bit. So I think that's sounding pretty good and punchy. Another thing we can do too is lower our release. Basically, this just makes the kick, when it's actually cutting through, it has less of a time to kind of drag on. It's just going to be a bit more instant, and it's going to cling to the actual waveform of the kick a little bit better. So I'm just going to put it on 0 and glide it the other way so you can kind of see what it does. So traditionally when I'm sidechaining, I do like to have it quite tight when I'm doing a kick to an 808, because I feel like the 808 is a very important and significant part of your mix. So you don't, depending on what you're doing, I really don't like to take away too much from the 808. I like the kick to quickly cut through and get out of there. That way the 808 has a lot of room to breathe. So that's why I'm kind of leaving the release like around the 20 millisecond mark. So the waveform's really tight and it's not taking away too much from the 808. And essentially what attack does is it lets you control the glide that the actual compression or volume control from the side chaining is coming in. So if you kind of wanted to have a bit of a more of a delay in a swoop instead of an instant cut, you can edit with your delays, with your attacks. I'll show you here. Bit hard to tell with the sound that I'm using right now, but that's generally something I don't touch, because again, when I do mix my kicks with my 808, I do like to keep it very tight and very snappy. So that's a really simple way, again, of making your kick stand out. If you find it's kind of ducking a bit under the 808, if you're using a very heavy 808. So I'm actually going to remove this because honestly, I think the way it's sounding right now, I have no problems with the kick clashing with the 808. But one thing I am going to do right now is if I go into my 808 on my sampler options, I'm going to create a slight delay before the kick. I'm going to create a slight delay in the 808. So when the kick hits, it's actually not hitting at the same time as the 808. So I'll give you an example here. If we go to the miscellaneous tab, the function tab, we have a time option here. And basically this lets us like time shift a little bit. So I'll just give you an example. I'm going to put this like halfway, and you'll hear the kick's going to hit first and the 808 is going to come much later. So it's not like super delayed. Actually, that actually sounds quite good, flipped all the way to the right side. But we're just going to make it a little bit subtle because I don't really want it to be offset that much. So that's a really good way of just giving, again, your kick some room from the 808 without actually having to do anything that has to do with compression or EQing or anything else. So I'm pretty happy with that. My kick and my 808 sounding fine together. Now I'm going to move into actually putting my drums all together and gluing them essentially. So I'm going to start sound by sound and kind of see if I can boost any frequencies. So in this case, I'm going to open up a parametric EQ. I use Filter Pro Q2.
And I'm just gonna mute everything except my kick, and I'm gonna listen to it and try to find the sweet spots. So before I go into it, generally speaking, your sweet spots for your kick are gonna be above 90. You're gonna hear a really punchy sound when you're sweeping through the frequencies. So you're gonna wanna create a bell, which just looks like a little like mountain. We're gonna tighten it a little bit with the Q option. And we're gonna sweep through as the kick plays and try to find that sweet spot. And you'll hear it when I hit it, because I'm gonna put the decibels really, really high, so you can kind of hear it pop out more. So I find that gives like a nice little boost. Generally speaking, when I'm doing any additive or subtractive EQing, I'm not going over the 4 decibel mark, because again, when I'm adding EQ onto the existing sound, it's kind of creating some mud, and I don't want too much mud, and I want it to sound the way I got it, but just give it a little bit of a boost. So right now I'm having around 3 dB, and that's where the punch is. I could go further if I really want to kick the thump more. I could go into the lower frequencies. The problem when you go before 90 is that you actually might find some areas that you're going to be clashing with your 808, because your 808 sitting usually like the actual thump from the 808 sitting before 90. One thing we're going to do, which is also a really good tip for meshing your kick and your 808, if I'm raising 290 decibel here, it's at about 115 hertz, I can actually go to my 808 and do the exact reverse of that. Because when I'm boosting a kick and it's already something that's kind of falling to the low end, if it is going in with my kick, I might want to lower my 808 a little bit. So in this case, because I delayed my 808, I'm actually not going to use it, but I'm just going to show you an example of how I would do that. So let's say I had them sitting on top of each other and I didn't want those frequencies to clash. I would just reference what I boosted in my kicks, so 115 hertz at 2.9 decibels. And I would essentially just do the same thing here. I would find 115, and then I would drop it down to about 290. And again, use your ear as well. And I'm not going to use this in this example, but another really good way of kind of making them mesh together. And then going into your clap or your snare, there are frequencies you can boost in your clap and snare if you wanted to kind of punch more. That frequency range lands a little bit more in the mid-range. So if I'm playing just my clap here, you can kind of see where all the audio is coming through. It's coming around like the 2 to 5K range. So again, with the same thing with the kick, we can just tighten the bell a little bit and we can sweep through and try to find those sweet spots in the clap. So I just brightened that a little bit. And when drum mixing or any mixing in general, all the little touches add up in the end. So as you can see, I'm doing this as I go. It's better to do it as you go than leaving it all to the end, especially just knowing our memories. Like you're gonna forget 2 hours into making a beat that you wanted to do this one change to your clap. You might as well just do it as you go and get it sounding nice before you move further into making your beat. So now just to show the reference, now we have the kick, the 808, and the clap mix. Next, we're going to move into hats. And it's a little bit debatable what to do with hats. Me personally, I like actually ducking a bit of the high end in my hats, but brightening it using other VSTs. The reason why is because I find most hats cut in a certain frequency range. It's a little bit jarring to the ears, and it almost cutting off some of the high end and lo-fiing it a little bit helps it sound cleaner in the mix because it's more on the level of like you're clapping your kick. It depends though, right? It depends on what kind of track you're making, because if your clap is really, really bright, then you probably want your hi-hats to reflect that. In this case, the clap's a little bit more muddy. It's not like super in the high frequency range, so I really do want to cut down my hi-hat. To give you an example, this is what they sound like together. So I feel like I could duck that down a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my, again, my Pro Q2, and I'm going to sweep through and find that really ringing kind of part of the hat, and I'm just going to subtract a little bit of that frequency. To me, that's a little bit less harsh to the ears and kind of mimics the clap a little bit better in the mix. So I'm going to leave it like that. I'm not going to do anything else to the hats. And then my open hat, I have in here as well. So that open hat is actually meshing with the clap. I'm actually going to drop the volume a bit. And basically what I find this does is it kind of helps balance out the clap and hat a little bit, because it's adding like a high frequency kind of ringing to the clap on the last beat. So basically what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to level it out a little bit, kind of like what I did with my hi-hats. Again, just reducing the harshness a little bit in it. That way it sits in the mix better. Lastly, we have the rim shot. So I'm not going to be messing with that rim shot. I honestly really like the way it sounds. I think it sounds really good just on its own. Just like a very subtle, like just little percussion sound that kind of falls inside the beat. Now that everything individually is mixed and at the right volume, I'm going to actually move into processing all my drums together. So what I do when I'm trying to make my drums sit really, really high in the mix, is gluing them together. So the glue is what you like to call a bus. And basically busing is just running all sounds through the same mixer track to kind of have better control of dynamics. So in this case, I'm going to be running it through its own, all of them through its own mixer track. So they're all going to be together, and I'm going to be running I think it's called a brick wall compressor through it. I use something called Rough Rider. It's a really great VST. It's also free if you want to download it. And essentially, this just lets you compress your drums, but at an extreme level. Because right now with music, everything's kind of trying to be louder and more in your face and really punchy. This is how I get my drums to really hit really hard, is that I'm running it through a brick wall compressor and I'm like pushing it to the max kind of thing. Almost like squaring the frequency. So basically, so I have better control over how much of that compression I want, I'm actually going to create a wet and a dry. Wet meaning control of all the effects that I'm running through the drums, and dry meaning the drums with nothing on it. So I'm going to start off by grabbing my kick, right-clicking an empty mixer track and rooting to this track only, and then just clicking the one next to it. Basically what this is doing is it's taking my kick away from the master, putting it into a mixer track, and then also putting it into a second track. So basically the first one is going to be my wet, and the second one is going to be my dry response. And with my wet and my dry, now that they're taken away from the master, I need to create a new master for them. So this is just going to give us control over just the drums and not the entire song. So we're going to route to this track only for the wet and the dry, and then we're going to name it master. And that's going to be the master for just our drums. So we're going to do the same thing, putting the clap into the wet and dry, and the rim shot into the wet and dry. The hi-hats I'm going to keep separate. Sometimes I might process them in their own channel and also do this exact same thing, creating a wet and a dry, in case I want to have effects on the hi-hat, like maybe a nice reverb, maybe even a compressor, different effects for the hi-hat. Essentially, I will just route them through the same bus and kind of have better control over the effects and make it more consistent with all of my high-end percussion. So now that we have a wet and a dry, we're gonna go over to the wet part of it. And actually, just real quick, I'm gonna play for you because you're gonna hear the volume's actually gonna be really loud on the drums already, just creating a bus. Because basically, the sound's being processed twice. It's like doubling it. So it's already making your drums very, very loud, which is really good. The compressor is gonna help control that and also just really push it to the limit. So I'm just gonna play it for you. They already sound a lot louder than before. So now I'm going to run Rough Rider into my wet. So what I love about Rough Rider is it's very simple. It's not as visual as some of the other compression VSTs, but there's basically, this is what I go to every time I'm processing my drums, because in my production, I really like my drums to be the thing that stands out the most in the mix. My 808 included, but if my 808's really loud, my drums need to be cutting very quickly, very tight. So this is what I'm doing. I'm basically pumping my ratio all the way to 1,000, making it just as compressed as possible. I'm putting my attack to very slow and then putting my release to very fast. And then for my sensitivity, I kind of use my ear for that, because your sensitivity is essentially controlling your gain reduction. So how consistent do you want that sound? How much dynamic range you want? Generally speaking, if I'm making my drum sound really, really loud, I actually like to leave a bit of dynamic range and really just let the drums kind of sit as they already are, as far as gain. But again, it does depend on what genre you're making, because if you're making something more boom bap and chill, you probably want more gain control, so it's more consistent throughout the track because it's very repetitive. But if you're making trap beats, you don't want your clap being dropped down and you're losing a bunch of volume. You want it to always be hitting the top of the limiter, right? So I'm gonna drop the makeup gain on the right just to about 8 decibels. And then I'm gonna go in here and lower this halfway, because if we play the audio right now, it would probably blow your ears out, because it's really compressing it. And we're just using a bit of the compression to make it like tighter, essentially. That's what our wet's doing. It's allowing us to control that second layer of drums and how much of that color or that volume we want on it. So this is it at 50%. So I'm already really happy with the gain reduction. It's sitting really low. It's just hitting at the kicks, and that's all I really need to control. Is because, again, the kicks are the loudest thing in my mix. So I'm gonna start adjusting the wet and just show you how loud it can really get. But before I do that, I recommend going on your master and either using a limiter or a soft clipper. And essentially what this is gonna do is just basically control you from clipping, because you don't wanna clip when you're running your drums through. That can cause hearing damage, it'll mess up your mix. Make sure you're not clipping when you're mixing your drums. So I'm just loading in a soft clipper, and I'm gonna be putting, my threshold all the way to the right, because I don't really want it to roll off any of the sound. I just want it to make sure I'm not clipping and I can't get past that top level. So I'm just gonna give you a reference here. And I'm also gonna brighten my clap a little bit more. So this is it without Rough Rider on it. Rough Rider. One thing to notice is how much that clap is pronounced. You can hear that clap so much clearer, and it doesn't really get ducked down or kind of drowned out from the kick. It really, really cuts through the mix. This is why this is really good for not just your kick, but all percussion, because realistically, you don't want your percussion falling super, super low when your kick's so high. You want to be able to have some control and kind of match the gain, make it sound like it's really pushing into your ears, right? So I'm actually going to lower the clap because I actually don't need that much volume anymore, considering all the work that Rough Rider is doing for me. Cool. So now we have our drums all glued together in their own drum rack, and we have full control over it with Rough Rider. Something else that we can also do as kind of like a little bonus, I have a couple of bonuses to throw in here. First thing being hi-hats. So I'm going to load my hi-hats into its own individual track. I'm not going to do a wet, dry, and master. I'm just actually going to load them into their own individual mixer track. Because I don't really need control over wet and dry when I'm using reverb. Rough Rider doesn't really have an option to control your mix level, and that's why I do the wet, dry, master, because I kind of need it. It doesn't actually give you the option on Rough Rider. So I'm just gonna load my hi-hat, route to this track only on an empty mixer for my hi-hat and my open hat. And then I'm gonna go in and name this hats. And then one thing I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna brighten it using Vocodex. And this is like something that I do. I haven't seen anybody else use this, but for some reason, Vocodex is just really good at processing drums sometimes. Like I'll load snares, different things through it. This is what I do to get my hat sounding really bright, and honestly just more airy and just more like it feels like brighter in the mix. You feel like you can actually like feel them a bit more, and it gives them like a thickness to it. So if you turn on the Vocodex, I'm going to start with a preset that's called 4 Drums 2. You'll notice that on the piano roll on Vocodex, we have some keys selected, and essentially this is like a program that's meant for vocals, for almost like playing chords over vocals and routing synths through it. So we don't want that. We're gonna actually remove these notes on it by just clicking them. And then I'll play it through, and you're gonna hear it's gonna be very loud. And we're just gonna be adjusting the wet and the release on it to kind of get a nice kind of brightness added onto the hats. I know it's super weird. Nobody would ever think to put drums through Vocodex, but it works amazing, and it really makes your hats very bright. One thing you'll have to keep in mind though, when you're adding this on, you might have to go adjust your mix again, because when your hats are kind of showing up a little bit brighter, or just with this on top of it, I find they really, really stand out in the mix. And again, we're trying to match that clap. We don't want them to be too bright. We want it to be pretty consistent throughout the mix. So I'm actually going to tone it down quite a bit, and I'm actually going to lower the volume of the hats overall as well. thing I like to do for my hats, if I'm trying to make them more interesting, open up Grossbeat, scroll through some presets, and just select your halftime feature and mess with your time knob, and you can actually blend in the halftime hi-hats to kind of sound like you have multiple hats going on, but really you're just using the same roll of hi-hats. So I'm just going to completely lower this and I'm going to bring it in, and you'll kind of hear how the lower halftime hi-hats are going to start cutting through the mix. The time signature I have for the hats, you actually can't tell that much because there's not really much going on. It's really 2x2. But another thing you can use is like even the arpeggio effect on Grossbeat. It can make your hats really interesting. Kind of giving it like a nice little glitch and like, again, just an extra layer on those hi-hats. Now for the last little bonus thing I'm going to show you, it's going to be how I process my 808s. Again, I think over everything, the most important thing to look at when you're processing, when you're creating a mix, especially if you're making like a lot of trap and hip hop, make sure you're choosing a good 808. And I've worked on 808s for like hours trying to get it perfect. And I've just realized that finding a good sample goes a really long way. What I do is I find a really good sample for an 808 and I load something called Decapitator. It's by Sound Toys and it's a really good compressor. And I'll flip through some presets and then make adjustments from there as to like what I want my 808 to sound like. So I'm actually going to lower the volume a bit because again, this is going to raise it quite a bit, but I'm going to start flipping through presets and you'll kind of hear the distortion and compression it's going to add to the 808. There we go. All I did was I put one VST on it, flipped through some presets, made a little bit of adjustments. Now my 808 sounding really huge. And one thing I also do use, which is like completely debatable because as far as mixing goes and fundamentals, like you're always supposed to really leave your 808 mono. You don't really want it kind of gliding through your mix in stereo. If you're very careful though, and you do it right, it can sound really, really good. And I actually use it a lot when I'm making music. I actually got this tip from some producer called Sam Gilliatry. I hope I'm saying his last name right, but he's really popular on SoundCloud. And I've always been obsessed with this 808s. And I think there was like a Q&A for him or whatever, and he actually came out saying like, I use like fruity chorus or like I use a chorus effect on my 808 and that's why it stands out so much in the mix. Again, keep in mind when you're doing this, it can take up a lot of headroom. So if you have a lot going on in your beat, it could really muddy up your mix and there might not be room for vocals. But if you're really trying to make your 808s very fat, definitely use stereo, but just monitor them as you're doing it. So I'm just going to show you here. I'm going to bring up Fruity Chorus. And in the cross type, I'm going to actually put my process to a low pass filter. And then adjusting my cross cutoff, I can kind of adjust how much I want the Fruity Chorus to affect the 808. So I'm going to start at the very right. You're not going to hear the effect pretty much at all. But as I swoop in, you're going to see it's going to start consuming more and more and more and more of the 808. Generally speaking, I like to leave this like covering most of the low end of the 808 and not so much of the distortion, but you can go all the way to the right and just let the whole 808 be consumed by this amazing effect. So I'll show you right now. So you might not be able to hear it. I don't know if it's coming through mono, but it just like the 808 just goes crazy. Like it's such a good effect to use on your 808s. Just keep in mind though, again, it can create mud. And if you're worried about that, just get some sort of phase meter tool, basically to see if your 808 is out of phase or not. And essentially, in the simplest terms, it just means, is it messing up the stereo of your track? So in this case, I'm just opening up on my Ozone 9 imager. And I have a phase meter right here. And if I start running audio through it, it's going to show you whether or not my 808's out of phase or not. So right now we're in the clear. As you can see, there's no red areas. When you start seeing red, at least on the Ozone 9 phase indicator, you'll know you're going out of phase. So what I'm going to do to give you an example of that, I'm just going to push my stereo width of the sound way up. So it's like forcibly spreading the 808 around, and you're going to see it fall into the red. And we can actually adjust this to add a certain amount of stereo width to the 808 without actually breaking out of phase and keeping it sounding good in your mix. I'm going to shut it off because I don't need any more stereo. I feel like the chorus is perfect and I'm not out of phase. So that's how basically I do my 808s. I use a Fruity Chorus, and on my hi-hats I use a Vocodex. It's very strange, but I guess this is just to prove the point that when it comes to making music, there really are no boundaries and people are figuring out things every day. These are just things that I experimented with and I found really worked really well for me. It's going to vary from person to person. But I really hope everything that I showed you today helps you a lot with processing your drums. And I just want to reiterate before ending, go download my archive pack that I have on my Instagram, because it's going to give you some really good sounds if you're looking for good sounds. Look up on Reddit drum kits, download Splice, pick your sounds wisely. Don't rely on processing. The more you rely on processing, I guarantee you your mix is going to be way more muddy. And also it's creating more work for you, which is unnecessary. When you're making music, you don't want to be spending 2 hours mixing your track. You want to be doing it as you go, little touches here and there. And then when it comes to the end, when you're doing your mix and master, it's a 10-minute process. It's not going to be a 2-hour process for that. So yeah, definitely keep in mind, good sound selection goes a really, really long way. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's it. I'll bring the laptop back. Okay. Yeah.
So, you want to stop sharing?
Yeah, I'll stop sharing my screen. See, Veronica's still there.
Yes, she is. Thank you so much, guys, for being with us. Thank you so much, House of PainT,
for giving us this opportunity. Young Heat, you killed it.
Thank you.
Really, really good information. And like you said, go and get your sounds. Really, really important. Be developed, grow. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you so much, Produced by Youth. This was really amazing. Where can people find you? I know you've already put out your socials, but let's remind them one more time.
I'll bring up the, I'll share the screen again to that one link so it'd be easier.
Amazing.
So there's all of our social media for Produced by Youth. I'm Young Heat. You can follow me at Young Heat Beats on pretty much on anything. And then again, if you want some sounds, go to my Instagram and you can download my sound pack from there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Produced by Youth. You're doing amazing work, and I'm looking forward to collaborating and supporting each other for years to come. This is our last educational session for day 2 of the Online Knowledge Conference. But this evening we are partying with DJ Magnificent on Twitch. So join us for that stream and have a little distance dance party together separately online.
definitely considering that.
Yes. Awesome. Hopefully we'll see you all back here tomorrow morning for more knowledge.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Sweet. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.